afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making the time to come. It looks like Teams is working fine. But if it starts being a bit dodgy, we might ask people to switch their cameras off. But otherwise, it's so nice to see people's faces actually, rather than just blank screens. So, Lucy, could you click next for me? So we've got a run through of various things we're going to cover today, and it's going to be a quick snapshot, and also to make sure that there's a bit of time at the end as well for any sort of questions from people. Thanks, Lucy. But meanwhile, what a journey to get us to this point. I thought it was just important just to map that out, because so much has happened, where we've started with 60 patients and now there was over 14,000 referrals to Freed, and so the impact really sort of speaks volumes. Next slide, and hopefully the computer doesn't crash, but just a little montage of all the people that have been involved along the way, and the different hairstyles, different buildings, people moving out of the country, including Vicky, who's in that picture, and changing governments. I mean, there's been so many changes, and what came to mind was, who said that people in eating disorders is not good at change, when we faced so many changes over the last decade? And these are just some snapshots from over the last 10 years of people present and past that have been so part of this story. And now it's going to be a time of handing over to you guys to take us into the next chapter. So that's all I wanted to say from me, and I'm going to hand over to Ulrika.
Okay, it's lovely to see all these pictures and all these familiar faces again. Takes us down memory lane. Today is really the marking of a very important milestone in the Freed journey, as we complete really our consolidation of Freed across England. And this comes on the back of other important milestones, such as the completion of the national rollout of Freed across England 2 years ago, and our anniversary last year, our 10-year anniversary. So the purpose of today's meeting is twofold. It's to take stock a little bit, as we're doing right now, and to also, much more importantly, think about the next steps for Freed and for early intervention more broadly, both locally in the UK, but also across the world. So in terms of my own personal stock taking as a clinical academic, I've obviously spent most of my professional life trying to improve treatments and services for people with eating disorders. But Freed has most easily been the most rewarding initiative I've ever had the pleasure to lead and to be involved in. And very early on, we had a detractor who said, Freed's not rocket science. And they were so right in saying this. The concept and practice of Freed are really simple and straightforward, and Freed makes intuitive sense to everyone who comes into contact with it, and it's very much valued by patients and families. But beyond that, Freed really has challenged us as clinicians to do better. So one of our AHSN colleagues said, Freed brings out the best in clinical teams. And I certainly feel that I've become much more impatient and patient-focused since I started seeing the world through early intervention lenses. Having said all that, Freed's not simplistic. It really requires skill, expertise, motivation, and hard work to do it well and to keep the show on the road. And you, as Freed champions and all the colleagues in your teams who set up and run Freed services across the country, are a living testimony to this dedication. So I'm very optimistic that Freed will continue to thrive and grow. Beyond England, Freed's being implemented in Wales, Ireland, hopefully Scotland too. In addition, colleagues from the Netherlands and Australia have taken inspiration from Freed and have set up Vibes and emerged as early intervention programs. And in Canada, we have Freed Canada, which is brilliant, and colleagues from Chile are now translating all our resources and setting up Freed services there. We have over 50 Freed sites in England, and now we're aiming for at least 50 or more across the world. Lastly, I just wanted to say there is a lot more we need to learn about early intervention, how to reach more people, how to reach them earlier, how to personalize early intervention, and what to do if early intervention doesn't work. And some of these questions are being addressed via the EDIFI and EDCRN programs, and you'll hear about this a bit later. And findings from these will hopefully benefit all Freed patients soon. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Ulrika and Danny. So my observation of coming into the Freed team is that the network is one of the best things about the project. And to celebrate that, if you go to the Freed website today, you will see something new on the homepage. We have launched this Freed community page forum. So you should be able to log in using the email address and password that you used to log in for the Freed training portal when you did those online modules and the resources. But you'll see that there's an extra little bubble in the middle there called the Freed community. And what we hope is that these conversations will continue, and this platform will encourage all those networks, regional networks, where we've had regional supervision, haven't we, recently, which has come to an end. We want those conversations to continue, and all the amazing things that you're doing in your services on the ground. We want to hear about them, and we wanted to facilitate a better format for communication. Next slide, please. So when you log in and you'll see the community page, you'll see that we've got a whole list of topics there, and you'll see the stream of different posts that we've started. We thought it would be good to get a few bits and pieces on there, but what I would say today is that I would love to see some posts from all of you. If you've got time, feel free to introduce yourself on the regional forums. We really want to start that with a bang, so please do log in and have a little look and make a post if you can. You can upload videos, media, posters, and whilst NHS Futures was good for a time and facilitated that, that communication, we really wanted to offer a platform that would support the network moving forwards. Next slide. So when you post, you'll get a few options. And you can do a draft post, which will come under the private setting. So it doesn't mean it's private from the group. It just means it's a draft of the post. You can title it and then choose which topic you want to add it to, and then add your pictures and your text. But yeah, anything that you feel proud of that you want to share with the community, we'd love to hear about that today. So yes, do let us know if there's any issues at all, because it's going live this morning and we have been testing it, but happy to support with any issues around that. Okay, handing over.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the changes to data and trackers. So with national funding sadly coming to an end, we want to support you to be able to continue with data collection and reporting as easy as possible. So first, why is data collection important to continue? Well, obviously, it helps you monitor how your service is performing in terms of patient outcomes and also wait times, and being able to keep track of whether you're able to meet those Freed targets. But it's also very important in making the case to secure funding from commissioners as well. And then we use it for a variety of different research efforts as well. So I'm going to give an example of that now. This is a recent study that we've just submitted, and it was looking at different service outcomes over the course of the pandemic and the longer term impacts post-pandemic as well. So this graph is looking at monthly referrals of freed patients from 3 different services. So these were services that had data from 2019, which is the pre-pandemic period, right up until now. And you can see that referrals increased during the pandemic, and they are starting to come back down, but they're not quite back at pre-pandemic levels, which might be your experience as well. And then we repeated this analysis in all services, but because a lot of services joined sort of 2020 and onwards, we couldn't compare to those pre-pandemic baselines, but we can see sort of a similar trend happening with the referrals coming back down. And we also looked at DUED, so the duration of untreated illness, and in the 3 services and in all services, we can see that DUED has increased slightly in the post-pandemic period. So we thought that this might be to do with delayed help seeking during the pandemic, sort of restrictions and people having a fear of infection and disruptions to access as well. So this is all really important information to that we need, which is why data collection is so important, but it is changing. So you're going to receive a new free tracker, and it will automatically calculate the key statistics that you would usually get in your quarterly summaries from me. And there will also be a guide and a training video, which will be on the community page that Jess was just speaking about. And then that will explain how to use the new tracker, but it's not too dissimilar from the one that you already have, so don't be scared. And yeah, for June, for the next quarter, if you could just submit your data to me as usual, I will make the quarterly reports just as usual. And then from September, it would be great if you could have a go at creating your own. And then I will be around to support by email and by Teams as well. And Lucy's going to talk a bit about how we use data for fidelity.
Okay, hello. Yes, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lucy. I'm a PhD student in the national team. So a quick overview for anyone who wasn't maybe at the Freed conference in September where I spoke about this briefly, or who needs an overview anyway. So implementation fidelity tools, such as those that are being used in early psychosis research, systematically measure whether the delivery of an intervention, such as Freed, adheres to its protocol. So they look at the question, how do we implement Freed and continue to do so in the way that it was designed to be? So the objectives for our Freed Fidelity tool that we've been developing as part of my PhD research are to provide a systematic approach for the continuous improvement of service delivery, to support Freed services to achieve and maintain high fidelity to the model, and to reduce variability in the delivery of Freed across the country. So if you were at the conference in September, next slide please, Lucy, you may remember that we had drafted 40 testable items that could be included in a fidelity tool. And we trialed some of these with some historic SLAM data from 2022 to 2023. And we placed a lot of the kind of ranking for this assessment on the speed of access to the service. So about 60% of the final score assessing fidelity could be attributed to time to offered assessment and treatment. And for our test data, this resulted in a quite consistently low score, as you can see here, so which was a bit shocking, a bit disheartening, and I think in the one sense it really demonstrates how we need a measurement like this to really kind of show that we need more support for early intervention. But also we went back to the drawing board because we also want this to be supportive and morale boosting. So based on this kind of pilot testing, we went back to the drawing board and have been reassessing all of the items, our scoring and ranking system. And what we now have is a updated draft of our fidelity tool. So we now have 35 items in our fidelity tool. And these can all return an overall fidelity score of how well the service is adhering to Freed, but can also be divided into 2 main components. So the first component that we are looking at in terms of fidelity is rapid access to the service. So that is looking at things like the offered and actual dates for engagement call, assessment and treatment start date. And We also have a second component which looks at, for example, care package, data collection, and all other items that we think are central to FREED and to early intervention more widely. So this includes, data collection on essential components such as DUED, diagnosis. Is FREED available for all intended diagnoses and ages? How is the FREED champion post conducted? FREED adaptations to treatment, involvement of family, and sort of wider things for early interventions such as is self-referral in place, and how transitions are managed in the service. So we thought that this would be a helpful way to look at fidelity and summarize the data as it separates out the wait times, which are not so easily controlled by the service all the time, from everything else that is kind of FREED or early intervention-y. So all of these items in our fidelity tool are weighted or ranked to reflect their kind of perceived importance to the FREED model and for early intervention more generally. So we still place a kind of higher weight to, for example, rapid access, but perhaps not as much as in our former draft of the tool. So how do we assess all of this? So we can use routinely collected data. So we've been, in our kind of trial runs, we've just been using tracker data quite easily. But we also have developed an interview that we can conduct with FREED champions to assess all of those other important items. So nothing, I think, within this tool is a mystery. Everything we ask about is kind of what you already know about as FREED champions and FREED experts. But in terms of our next steps, we're now ready to trial the tool in a few more services in a cross-sectional study, which is really exciting. And so we've reached out to some services already, but if you're extra keen to be involved in this research and have time for a maximum 1.5-hour interview in June or early July, please do email me. We'll continue to refine and adapt this to the new data collection processes, and we'll just keep you updated about this research on the FREED community pages as well. But ultimately, this research and fidelity assessments are a way to use data not only to lobby for more support to make maybe certain areas work better in FREED, but also to kind of showcase where you might be doing really fantastic with FREED. But I will leave it there for my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Lucy's. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a new network, which we hope will allow for some of you a progression from the FREED network to the Eating Disorders Clinical Research Network. And if Lucy moves us to the next slide, some of you will have already heard about this as a new UK-wide network, which spans child and adolescent as well as adult eating disorder services in England, as well as Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And this has started as a 3-year project funded from the Medical Research Council, led jointly by myself and Professor Jerome Breen at King's and the Maudsley, with Ulrika as a co-I and other investigators concentrated in London, but with representation around the country, including Sherilyn as one of our leading early FREED network sites in Birmingham. We also have support from a lived experience steering committee, and we have charity partners with BEAT and FEAST. And whilst we started as a 3-year project, we're already looking to obtain funding to ensure that this is sustainable beyond the first stage of the project. And what EDCRN really aims to do is support services all around the country to collect the same information from and about patients via a secure digital platform, allowing us to have for the first time a national network and database showing who is being seen in eating disorder services and how our treatments are performing for different groups. And if we go to the next slide, we've really tried to learn from all the learning that has come from FREED over the last decade and beyond, in terms of the benefits of having a national network for learning and collaboration and research, but also the importance of consistently collecting information on eating disorder onset and duration of untreated eating disorder, and the potential for data to drive positive change within our services individually, but also at a national level. There are some key points of difference. So this is, of course, for FREED, but also non-FREED patients, and it's across all of the UK and all ages. And we're using a secure online digital platform to collect a wider range of data. And this means that instead of needing to manually enter questionnaire scores in the FREED tracker, for example, there's scope to directly collect questionnaire measures within the EDCRN platform. And I'll show you that in a minute. If we go to the next slide. The platform itself has been developed by a company called Eclipse, who are very familiar with working within the NHS landscape, and it offers 3 different strands to the platform. Themselves directly log in with an account, provide consent to be part of EDCRN, and that's where they can then complete their direct questionnaires, and carers can do the same where applicable. For clinicians and services, it's offering us this standardised approach to data collection so we can all collect the same information, but it does then allow us to see the questionnaire responses and other results coming in from our patients, and there'll be scope for national benchmarking summaries across the network. And then finally, it provides this research database. So at a national level, we have scope to look at anonymous data across the whole of the network. Each service can also use their own data, and this is the only time that data are downloaded from behind the NHS firewall, so that you still have your data for your own purposes. And crucially, for Freed, that includes being able to merge with the Freed tracker to make, I hope, lives a little bit easier. If we go to the next slide, just a couple of screenshots to give you a sense of the system. This is the patient landing page for EDCRN, so it's what patients will see when they first access the site. It gives them information about the network and they can then log in. The idea is that this would be sent from the local service, typically at the point of booking and assessment. And the platform has a number of accessibility features, including lots of different language options, scope for audio and visual translation where needed. What you can see on the next slide is some of the different questionnaires that will be displayed when people log in and can work through these. We've built on what we're already using in the Freed network in terms of our standard measures like the EDEQ, the PHQ-9, the GAD-7, but also have a broader array of measures to assess different presenting difficulties. And these are separate for the different age groups that might be participating. And then on the next slide, you can see what the questionnaires are displayed as. So for clinicians to get a sense of how your patients are doing on the different measures. This is the EDEQ, shown here as a single time point, but it will then update longitudinally where we have repeated data for a patient. And then on the next page, just wanted to highlight some of the integration with the data that we routinely collect in Freed. So this is the clinician entry data page on the EDCRN platform. We've really tried to minimise the amount of information that clinicians are directly asked to provide. But you can see we ask for diagnosis, and then we collect date of referral, date of assessment, when someone first met criteria for an eating disorder, and if they're being seen through Freed. And for Freed patients, we directly ask as well about DUED, but we'll be able to calculate that for all patients in EDCRN based on these dates provided. And again, this is where you can directly link this information from EDCRN platform into your Freed trackers if useful. So for anyone who would like more information on EDCRN, you're welcome to email me directly, particularly if it relates to Freed. But for more general queries, I've included a broader EDCRN email on the slide. And I know lots of you were already in discussions with and look forward to taking further. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks, Karina. So next we have a bit of an update on the peer support project. So for those of you who attended the conference in September, we were kind of midway through the process and the project. And just for a recap on what we were asked to do and were commissioned by NHS England, I'm going to give you an overview. So we were asked to pilot senior peer support workers in 3 eating disorder services, Freed services, and the idea was to have 2 per pilot service doing 1 day per week, with oversight from Freed champions as supervisors and us as a national team providing oversight to the Freed champions and the senior peer support workers. So I guess the aim of that was to really look at defining the role. Now, the senior peer support workers were working at a band 5 role, which, whilst there was some experience in that area, wasn't clearly defined. So we wanted to explore what that role could look like, what job descriptions, what kind of activities, what they might be leading on, and looking at those interventions and supervision as well for maybe more junior peer support workers. And the idea was really to come up with some resources that not only are written by peer support workers, but are also, maybe could be used by peer support workers working in free services. And alongside that, there was quite a lot of project management support. I think working at a band 5 level, we really felt it was important to give an overview to the senior peer support workers around how projects are initiated, explored, scoped, and then how they translate into a manageable process. And then part of that was kind of pulling all these strands together. So we actually asked the senior peer support workers and the free champions to keep a bit of a supervision journal all through the journey so that we could really capture the learning points from implementation and understanding of the senior peer support work role. So what did we find? Next slide, please. So there were some key aspects, and the learning report for the project will be published before the end of May. And really the key aspects that we identified was that the recruitment process was really important for peer support workers, i.e. making sure that their role was clearly defined. I think in some cases there was feedback really that there's quite generic job descriptions, but actually what that translates into the role is quite different for different peer support workers. And actually they kind of let us know that that can be quite anxiety provoking if you don't know what you're doing when you're turning up to work each day, or maybe you feel quite responsible for shaping that role. We also identified that an induction process that involves other peer support workers is really important, connecting to those wider trust networks too, and adequate training so that actually peer support workers not only receive their kind of peer support generic training, but also eating disorders specific training too. We looked at the competency framework for peer support workers and the competency framework for therapies in eating disorders and support. And actually we asked the peer support workers and the supervisors to make a checklist as they went along the project to see what competencies felt appropriate and relevant to our senior peer support workers, to aim to give some guidance really to services on what this role could look like and the competencies needed. And then job description comes in again. I guess the peer support workers felt it would be really helpful to review that at periods of time because of that, having a job description at the outset, but it not necessarily translating to what they were doing in their current role. And I think generally there was a mix of views really around understanding what the peer support role is. It was really interesting to hear from our national network of peer support workers that a lot of them are doing meal support, which I hadn't encountered, and actually where that fits in terms of supervision and support for that role as a person who's got lived experience of an eating disorder potentially. Supervision definitely came up as one of the most important aspects of the projects. And some of our senior peer support workers actually went on and did their supervisors training. And it was really interesting to hear around the different models of supervision training on offer to peer support workers and how that differs from clinical supervision. And I think really hearing from our free champions and what it felt like to supervise our peer support workers in a clinical way, but also trying to remain, I guess, sympathetic and empathetic to the role, sharing your lived experience. I think that was definitely something that they felt they wanted more training and confidence and experience in. And then finally, I think there was a general sense really that career progression can be quite hard for those in peer support work roles. A lot of them actually are really skilled, have master's degrees, but have struggled to enter the career progression pathway within the NHS because it doesn't always fit. So there were recommendations there really for future exploration of how they could really dovetail into other employment pathways within the NHS. Final slide, please. So at the end of the project, what we will be publishing on the Freed website, and keep an eye out for updates on our free community forum, is that we've got a peer support toolkit of a variety of things that you can use, templates in terms of implementing peer support workers in an eating disorder service. One of the things that our pilot sites worked really hard on was a recovery group. So this is a 5-session intervention specifically for free patients delivered by peer support workers. And we'll be able to publish a facilitator's manual, but also a patient manual for services to use however they want to. They're all amendable and editable, that's the right word. And all those resources will be available on the Freed website, and the learning report and recommendations from the pilot too. Thanks.
So, thanks, Jess. So as we move into this new era of non-central funding, people wanted to know what sort of support might be available to them, and because until now, sort of all the training, implementation, supervision and evaluation, we've been able to provide you. So we're not going anywhere. We are here, and we have put together a brochure, for the better word, I'm sure there is, but a program where if you would like any additional support from us or training for your teams or supervision, then we are available, but I'm afraid it comes at now a cost because we need to cover our costs. So we'll be sending that out on Monday along with our newsletter, which will also be talking in a bit more detail about also what you've heard today. But of course, all the online modules continue to be there and available for you to access at any time. So when you have new staff members join, please do send them on to the website, and then the communication page will also be updated, and anything new that's coming through or coming along will be there. So please don't think we've just chucked you all out. Absolutely not. Freed continues, and if you need any support whatsoever, we are here. So more details to follow, but as ever, just get in touch. Thank you.
Okay, and this reverts to me to talk a little bit about Edify at the end of this webinar. And many of you will have heard me talk about Edify in terms of this being a sister program to Freed, or I've also thought about it as yin and yang. So Freed very applied, very much frontline, down on the ground, but Edify is a very large, ambitious research program that's trying to think about how can we improve early intervention. It involves a big multidisciplinary team from different universities all over the UK. It involves multiple youth advisors with lived experience. They are a very lively and interesting and creative bunch. And our key issue is we want to develop more personalized care. What does that mean? We are very mindful of groups that have not been well served by eating disorder services so far, whether that's men, whether that's people from minoritized ethnic groups or other minoritized communities in terms of sexual or gender identity, and those who are living in larger bodies. So there is all of that. We are also trying to think about how can we support people who don't respond so well to early intervention, and what are the people who are the people who are super responders. So a lot of this is being addressed within Edify. And Lucy, yes, thank you. So for you as people involved in Freed, you may want to know how can you get involved in Edify. And there are a number of different ways that I will outline. So firstly, you can contribute to our ongoing research. Edify is a 4-year program. We have 1 more year left, and we're about to ask our funder for a further extension just to finish off some bits and pieces. And there are 2 studies I will briefly describe where you can participate. But you can also contribute to our early intervention declaration. Again, I'll say a bit about that in a minute, and help us celebrate advances in early intervention research early next year. I'll give you the dates. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of ongoing research that you and your services could participate in, there are two big studies that I want to mention. One is the STORY study, where we use remote measurement technology with smartphones and wearables to set up a cohort of young people, over 800 young people, some that are freed young people with short illness duration, others who are in the same age bracket, 16 to 25, but have a longer illness duration, but also have some healthy controls. And we're comparing the profiles of these young people using remote measurement technology by following them up for 1 year. Who are the people who respond very quickly to treatment? Who are the people who are having slower than usual recovery trajectories? And the idea really is to find novel targets for intervention in this way, and to develop more personalized interventions, to use scarce NHS resources better. The other study, the RAISE trial, uses non-invasive brain stimulation, theta burst stimulation, as a safe, acceptable precision treatment in young people with anorexia who haven't responded to early intervention. And we're 2/3 into this trial. We have a lot of interest, but if you wanted to point this out to your patients, we would be delighted. Next slide, please. Coming on now to our early intervention declaration, and I mentioned this already at our Freed at 10 conference. Can you click next, please? This will consist of 3 steps. So in preparation for developing such a declaration, which we are about to do a stakeholder survey on the topic of early intervention. So this will go to everyone involved in Freed. This will go to patients, whether they have received early intervention or not. This will go to carers and any stakeholders working in the broad area of eating disorders in the UK, to really see where are the gaps, where are the challenges, where are the good things about this, how can we make this bigger, better, bolder. Okay, next please. So based on this, we will then hold a range of stakeholder focus groups. And this will also still be first half of this year. This will involve people from Edify, from Freed, but also people who may have completed the survey and expressed an interest. And then third step, and we will use the learning from Edify, from Freed, and steps 1 and 2 to develop an early intervention declaration with action points for policy and practice, and also write a parallel scientific paper on it. Okay, moving on to my very last slide, which is that we, at the end of Edify, are planning a celebratory event, and this is scheduled for January 2026. We've got King's College Great Hall on the Strand, so it's in central London. The other good news about this is that this very nice conference venue comes for free. So the costs for this conference can be relatively low to us. We've assembled a stellar cast of national and international speakers. So we'll have Professor Matt Broom from Birmingham, who's very involved in youth mental health and is looking across early intervention and prevention. We have Professors Essie Wieding and Pasco Fearon, who are based at UCL, who are doing a big new program on school-based prevention of common mental disorders, anxiety, depression, trying to improve kids' emotion regulation and emotion skills. And they will come to the end of this trial and will describe their program. We've invited Professor Ed Watkins from Exeter, who leads the Nurture You program, which is all about student mental health. He has various digital trials for students in there, and he has data also on eating disorders, students with eating disorders. So these have all agreed. And last, we have Professor Jessica Schleider from Philadelphia University, who works in youth mental health and has designed beautiful single session interventions to make a big impact with very short interventions in young people. And then, of course, we also, within the Edify Consortium, will have lots of data and new findings, and we will present those. So we have decided that each Freed team will get one free in-person ticket and additional online tickets for their team. So if you're interested, write down the dates. More formal communication about it will follow. Pretty much all I have to say, other than thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to everyone in the Freed team. I think we need to mention we've had so many wonderful, inspiring early adopters who have helped us to learn so much from them. But also we've had so many wonderful researchers who have worked with us to keep Freed going and keep it growing. And that's all I wanted to say. So we have lots of questions, I think.
Questions about data, so maybe I'll just re-explain that bit. In June, just submit your trackers to me as normal and you'll get your quarterly reports. And then for the next quarter, there'll be a new tracker, which is pretty much exactly the same as what you already have, but there will just be some additional tabs on it that automatically calculate the statistics that you would usually get from me. And then you can use that, however is most beneficial to you within your service. So service evaluations, if you use them to make the case for funding and things like that. But you can really personalize the new Freed tracker template so that you're getting out of it what you want. Hopefully that's a bit clearer. I don't know if there was any other questions about data.
Lucy, I think people just wanted explicit message about whether they also send it to us once we're beyond June.
Yeah, so I don't think that you will need to send your data in anymore. I know some services have operational agreements that they can, but yeah, you don't need to send your data after June.
Okay, so there is a lot of tracker anxiety in the chat. But Lucy is going to be around until September at least, end of September and possibly beyond. We are working on that. There is a person who who you can talk to as well. And I see everyone's been super efficient at answering. Jess has answered all the questions about the peer support. Do you want to add to this?
Yes, I was just going to clarify for Jenny that I know that tenders went out last year for peer support workers, carer peer support workers and service user ones, but I know the contracting I think got retracted. So there is definitely huge plans for that, but yeah, I'll see what I can find out and I'll put it on the community forum.
Good. And then Francesca, you are asking about any advice on how to encourage commissioning of Freed in areas where there is still no Freed. So we can all answer this, but the rational answer, of course, is show them the evidence. And if they ignore this the evidence showing that the outcomes are much better and it's cost saving, so how can you not commission it? However, in these many years of Freed rollout and implementation, what we have learned is that the voices of patients and carers are really, really important and are getting commissioners to listen much more than the evidence base, which is ridiculous. That it isn't just a bit of both. But we have had situations where we presented evidence till we were blue in the face, and they said that's all very nice. And then something appears in a newspaper where a difficult case is described, and then there is action. So you need to appeal to heads and hearts, more to hearts than to heads, I would say. And come to us also if you are aware of any services that are struggling with commissioning. We'll be happy to talk to them to think about what tricks of the trade we can give them. Because it's a bit like being a jungle fighter, really, getting this out there.
Noise. Keep making lots of noise. One of the questions was about checking about being free to I think you mean compliant rather than complaint, hopefully. Hopefully there's no complaint. And being freed, informed and paying for supervision and training. So this is where also the Freed principles come in, and in the future fidelity. But we are encouraging you all to keep flying the Freed flag. And yes, if you want to pay for supervision and support from us, then you can do. And all the details will be in this programme brochure that's going to go out on Monday to you all. But also use the community forum that's now set up to ask questions. And you absolutely don't have to pay for to use the Freed logo, absolutely not, no. So, but we are all asking that, that you are trying everything to keep working towards and keep up the Freed principles. So it's not Ulrika's term of Freno, Freed in name only. We don't want Freno, we want Freed. But I think this also comes back to taking on the mantle of evaluating your own services post-June and how important that is, because then you can track yourselves of how well you're doing against the principles and where you might need to tweak things, what's going well, what needs working on. So it's a continual learning. So keep going. I hope that answers that question. I love David's question. When the government starts handing money out again, I love your optimism, Dave. Maybe we can start centralised support again. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because I think we've really seen how it has helped and supported everyone to have this sort of central hub, if you like, and we're trying our best to make sure that continues in a different form. And this is where really it's going to be, the network supporting each other to keep things moving forward.
And hopefully the Edify conference can be a way of talking informally and networking across Freed teams. We'll make sure there are lots of breaks where that can happen. Yeah. Good. So it is 12:51, so we can let everyone have 9 minutes of their day back, because it seems we've been very efficient. All the questions have been answered. And shall we say au revoir, not goodbye at this point?
Not on for now.
Whatever floats your boat. Yeah.
And keep going.
Yes, indeed. And yes, talk to us on the community page. link in with us through Edify, through EDCRN. None of us are actually going anywhere, so I have no doubt you will still have plenty of contact from us in different ways, and we look forward to that.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take
Thanks,
care.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.